tried this story with the group downstairs, and there was only honest English there, but it was loud and it was hard to do. But no, it's I have it. So we'll start with a story. We're talking about Christian morality. When we're talking about morality, we're talking about right and wrong, what you ought to do, what you should do, what is good to do, where do we get it from, where does it come from, and what is the Christian position on these things. And this is supposed to be a workshop, and with a workshop, less people works better. So I want to interact with you guys. I want to engage with you guys. Get your opinion. Instead of me talking the whole time and just trying to answer the questions, all of you guys, all these minds put together is better than mine. So we'll start with the story. You're a driver of a trolley train. And a trolley train is not exactly like a train. It's smaller than a streetcar. Who knows what a streetcar is? It's kind of like one of those things you've seen in movies in Paris. People jump on it and they grab on it, and while it's rolling by. You're a conductor of a trolley train, and you're speeding down the track 60 miles an hour. And you notice that far down the track, there's 5 workers working. Now you try to press on the brakes, and you start to panic because your brakes aren't working. And you're heading towards these workers, but they don't know you're coming. And you start to panic, you start to feel desperate, and you don't know what to do. When suddenly you notice that there's a sidetrack. And the sidetrack would take you in a different direction. You would avoid the 5. And you notice that in the sidetrack, there's 1 worker on the train tracks working. Now your steering wheel works, and you're in a panic, and you have to make a decision. Let it go, and you hit the 5 people and you kill them. Let's say you know that they're going to die. Or you steer the steering wheel and kill the 1 person. This is a story from a Harvard talk on justice and the moral side of murder. What would you do? Who would, let's take a poll, let the train go and hit the 5 people? Who would take the sidetrack and kill the 1 person? 4 people? 3 people? 4? 5? Okay, let's try again. Who would leave the train, let it be, and hit the 5 people? Now, if you let it be, you're not interfering. It's an accident. You're just letting it be. This is the way you're going. This is the way it's going. These 5 people die. It's an accident. It's not your fault. The brakes weren't working, unless you were supposed to check the brakes. That's your fault. So, the people that said they would take the sidetrack.
Preventing less casualties. Will be less.
It's better to kill 1 person than to kill 5 people.
So we can't. So we can't warn anyone or anything like that.
No, you got nothing. You have no. You the only option is a choice to go right or leave it or go right.
So you're saying that they won't even see the train coming at all.
You're just going so fast.
No, I can't do that.
Just hop off.
Human mind, you will opt out to go for the 1 because that's how our mind thinks. If we know advance the aftermath of what will happen, our human mind will say, "What? Let me so in everything we try to minimize the destruction of the consequences.
Okay. So let's say this is 1 type of morality where it says that what is right benefits the most people. Who agrees with that? What is right is what benefits the most people.
Depends.
Who would agree with that? So let's have a second scenario. Let's say say you're not the driver of the trolley train. You're standing on a bridge over the train tracks, and you're seeing the trolley train come. And you notice that the driver doesn't notice these 5 workers. But standing next to you, leaning over, is a very, very, very fat man. And you know that if you were to just tap him, he would fall on the train tracks and stop the trolley train and save 5 lives. But you kill that one man. Would you do it? Who would push the man?
Mm-mm.
Can't have it on your conscience.
I can't have blood on my hands. Sorry.
Oh, because he's fat, that's why you can't kill him. So but if he's already fat, that means he's already gonna die. I know you don't know.
So hold on.
That's a heart condition. You don't know if he's gonna lose weight. Neither do you.
They can't hear you.
So just tip him over.
So this train has no
So
horns
it's a
or
similar
anything?
scenario. What was that?
This train has no horns or anything
There's nothing
like what?
additional to what his story
like this. Like what kind of train is this? Like,
Well, in the second scenario, you notice the driver isn't noticing the worker, and he's just speeding towards them. So it's the same thing in the second scenario.
Can you warn the workers like you're over the bridge?
You're too far.
Hey,
You're just too far.
But like they wouldn't even hear you because the train just makes a lot of noise anyways. It's a
Can
trolley
you
train.
jump in front of the
No,
train?
it's a
Who would
trolley
do
train.
that?
Trolley train make more noise. If it was a speed train, they would have to do it.
But you may not be heavy enough to stop the train. But that man for sure can stop the train. Well, it's the same idea. You're killing one person but saving 5. Why?
But what's the difference between making a
It's not your call to make.
so if someone's at gunpoint,
in the same way that you don't have a right to take someone else's life, you don't have a right to take your own life because you didn't make it.
But you're trying to push someone over to stop something.
Exactly. So if we can't push that person over because it's wrong to take that person's life, it's also wrong to take your own life.
No, that's your personal choice.
Yes.
That's not your
Say that
personal
again.
choice. It wasn't your choice to make it.
What if you ask him, hey,
Nobody's
can
gonna
you
say
be
yes.
quiet?
we only have like 5 seconds and we have this conversation.
So here's the difference between the 2 scenarios.
I don't
In the
know.
first scenario, although it's the same idea of less people die. As she said, in the first scenario, you're in charge. You're in the situation directly, and you have to make a decision. In the second scenario, you're not involved in the situation. And so you are making a decision for someone else. And the question is that right? Here's another scenario. You're a doctor, and you have 5 injured people that just came in from a train accident. It's related. And to survive, they all need an organ, a different organ. And in the next room, you have one person who came in for a checkup and he's taking a nap.
Ooh, that's terrible.
So you know that if you leave the 5, they're gonna die. But this one person, you could take their organs and save 5 people.
So much dedication.
I can't do that.
You lose your
I'd have to let them die.
No, you have to because even if you
Okay, let
do,
me add a twist. What if that one person in that room wasn't there for a checkup? What if they were really sick and they were gonna die anyway in a couple of weeks?
Oh, let them die first and then we'll go back.
you're allowed to harvest your organ unless if he signs his health card, sure.
So who would let the 5 people die? They're in critical condition. Who would let them die and not touch that one sick man?
Me?
And one sick man and save 5 lives?
I can't do that.
No?
If the guy is sick, how do we know his organs are like what's he sick of? Is there like certain condition he has? Like he's just sick?
Yeah, he's coming off a runny nose and checkup.
So, so these are questions. These are questions to probe at our conscience, to probe at our hearts, to ask what is right and what is wrong. The world we live in says that what's right for you is right for you, and what's wrong for you is wrong for you, and you have to determine that for yourself, and you can't judge anybody. What's right for you is right for you, and what's wrong for you is wrong for you. What's right for me is right for me. The society we live in says that society determines what's right and wrong. And so you were raised and you were taught what's right and wrong, and there isn't this higher power or force that tells you there's a right and wrong. It's just what society told you. And what's right for that society is what that society decided it to be. This is what the world, many people believe. And this is why people say don't judge. So who thinks that right and wrong is innate and comes from something higher than us? And who thinks that right and wrong is what we decide and it's what we've been conditioned to believe? Who thinks it's a conditioning? And who thinks it's innate, it's from something higher than us?
I think it's something.
I think it's both.
Yeah,
Think
could,
it's both?
Yeah.
could be
I'll
both.
give it to you.
Okay.
Because you have a sense of right and wrong, right? But we live in a society where we learn things as we grow, right? So you don't learn automatically to, like, that you're black and this person is white, and like the negativities in between that. You don't learn that. You're not born with that, right? But you are born with knowing you do have a sense of right and wrong as a child, because when a child does something bad, they know it's bad and they look at you to confirm it's bad, but they originally know it's bad, but you confirm it for them. So it's
how
both.
does society work?
There's an author, C.S. Lewis, he says that many people say this. They say what's right for you is right for you. But most people don't live like that. He says that every single day we make claims or accusations where we say stuff like this. Why are you saying that? That's my seat. Hey, that's not fair. Why would you do that? That's hurtful. Because as many people say these things, but they live contrary to it. Everybody lives as if we ought to act a certain way. We ought to behave a certain way. Everybody lives as if they should be treated a certain way or they have certain rights. We live that way. And this is the same all around the world. People live with a morality. Where it came from, different people have different opinions about. But usually people who say these things, they contradict it with the way that they live. And it's funny that people that say there is a right and wrong, we also contradict it with the way that we live, by doing things that we know we shouldn't do. But we observe this in nature. That in nature, things are a certain way. When you drop a rock, gravity pulls it down to the ground. This is the way it is. Animals behave a certain way. Lions behave a certain way. Giraffes behave a certain way. Monkeys behave a certain way. But we notice a different nature, a second nature in this world, and it's called human nature. And human nature doesn't always perform the same way. Humans, we have this conscience, we have this mind, we think, and we don't always function the same way. We don't do what we ought to do. And we divert and we do different things. So there's human nature and then there's nature. But our very bodies tell us a lot about ourselves. And it's an interesting thought that your body tells you that your eyes are for seeing. Don't stick your finger in your eye. Your nose is for breathing. Your ears are for hearing. Your body tells you these things, that it was meant to function a certain way. That there's a right for your body. Is that true? And that there's a wrong for your body. Don't put junk or dirt in your body. Don't cut your body. It starts to die. But our body says that one is a male, one is a female, the way that it's designed. And that when they come together, the sperm is for the egg and they match. They meet. And the purpose is life. It's to create life. So without any Bible, without any previous knowledge, when you observe the body, you notice that there's a right for the body. It was meant to function a certain way. And so there's a truth for your body. There's a truth that beyond us that we can't argue with. We can't argue with the function of our eyes or the function of our mouths. We can't argue that, I'm just going to decide not to eat today. So there is that truth. And that truth came from somewhere. There's different beliefs. Some people believe that this universe is just materialistic. That everything is just physical and this is the way it was and this is the way it is. It's just material. That we don't determine truth. We don't determine right or wrong. This is just how it is. And some people believe that things have evolved. That by some chance, the universe came together with the perfect physics and chemistry and all the right dimensions in order to function. And by some chance, all the chemicals and the right ingredients came together in order to create life. And this is just how it evolved. But who believes that there's absolute truth? For it's hard to live any other way than to believe that there's absolute truth. Because if there is an absolute truth, then we can't know anything for sure. We can't know if the words we're speaking are right, if our actions are right. We can't look at anyone and say anything. You can't say that's right or that's wrong. The moment you say that's wrong, you're appealing to a higher standard. The moment you say don't judge or don't do this, you're appealing to a higher standard. And so, the point that I want to make is that right and wrong isn't in every philosophy and in every religion. Right and wrong comes from the Judeo-Christian Bible. So this idea of right and wrong, good and evil, because other philosophies don't believe that. Some philosophies believe that this isn't really real. Some philosophies believe that it's just to do what's beneficial for you, or good for you, or what advances you. But good, evil, right, wrong, they come from the Christian worldview. So this is Christian morality. And so while we have this opportunity, we have a chance to talk about these things, to talk about some of the things that we wonder about. Modesty, music, sexuality, piercings, tattoos. Because we know that there's a right and wrong. And it's logical to think that this right and wrong came from something higher than us, because that's the way we live. And that it came from the Bible. But there are some areas where the Bible doesn't necessarily address specifically. Have you guys ever been asked something that you couldn't answer about the Bible? Have you guys ever been asked, why Christianity? Have you guys ever heard, every way is right? Jesus is just one way. Why your way? Have you guys heard these things? What if I were to ask you that question? And say, it's selfish to think that your way is right and that everyone else is wrong. Who can answer that? It's selfish to think that Christianity is right and every other way is wrong. It's selfish to think that you're right and everyone else is wrong. Can anyone answer that?
Well, fair enough to say it's a question, but my office, my boss, and he's not an atheist, but he has no beliefs. He's a good person, why there's Judaism, like why there's so many different versions of Christianity. There's only one God, which I believe in, but someone else is going to believe something completely different. My views are different and their views are different. As an individual, I'm allowed to have those views, so are they. So is it selfish to think that you're right and someone is wrong? Yes. You have no right, because Christianity is faith. It's 100% based on faith. That's how I see it. Because I mean, I listen to like he's really like my boss is really knowledgeable. He's read the Bible back to back, and he does not believe in it, but he likes to argue with me on the Bible. He's like, well, prove this. I'm like, well, I can't prove it. I have faith in it, and that's his problem. The word faith, because that's really what Christianity is. Like we have to have faith to live in Christianity. Because yes, we see things around us. There's a higher power. There's a reason for everything around us. The air is from somewhere. Like you from somewhere, but until you die, you don't know what really happened. Like we're alive. We want to believe that when we die, there's something. There's like judgment. There's something higher. There's a higher power. But like you don't actually have the proof. So it's all faith. That's all we. That's all this is based on. We all have to believe. It's a faith thing. Because I can't come up to you and be like, okay, well, I don't believe you have the Bible, then why should they believe that I have the last day? Why can't it just be, well, we woke up today, the sun is up, the sun is down. We want to believe there's a God who's controlling everything. We want to believe that someone created everything, which is perfectly fine. But it is, I personally believe it's 100% selfish to be like, well, mine was correct and yours isn't. It shouldn't, like, that's what, like, stuff with the arguments. That's why people think that Christianity is systematic religion. It's something that was created. They blame wars and other issues in the world based on Christianity because of the argument it is. It causes separation. That's what other people believe. So I think the best way to see it is, yes, it is selfish. I if I explain myself correctly.
I think it's not selfish to think that because I think that's how everybody thinks. Like if you believe Christianity is correct, right, and it's a true religion. I mean, Christianity says it's the only true religion. To believe that it's the true religion, you must believe that other people are wrong. So yeah, I don't think it's selfish.
But how can you say that though?
Well, I don't think it's I don't think it's selfish because you just look at um, the word of God, yes. And if you want to pursue truth, is not something that is invented, right? To pursue truth, is search for truth, and in searching of truth, you'll be able to find truth. So we read the Bible, for instance, the Bible does not give us just thing that is somewhere in the skies. It puts names, it puts location, it puts authors, it puts journeys on it. So if we read the Bible from Genesis and we come to, let's say, Malachi, where we could see how a nation is being formed, and you and I are able to still see that nation existing right now, right? Then, yeah, and from there, it transitions into the New Testament, where we see that it seems that that was a shadow. And if we talk about Paul writing some letter, it's like, no, some of you guys are even still alive. When we both saw the physical Jesus rising up, these are letters that is being written while people were still alive, and the author who was making this statement knew that people were there. So to me, I don't think it's selfish because Jesus himself said, I am the way, and there's no other religion that has come and said, I am the way, so everybody to follow me. And Christianity, Jesus also said that we should go and make disciples. Yes, he knows that, yeah, people will not follow him. Actually, says by faith. He doesn't know that people will not follow, but he said that, yeah, we shouldn't worry. There's some people who will not follow him, but to me, what makes it is that there's witnesses, whereby I always use this as an example. If he has $1 million and I have 100,000, and you're looking for $500,000, who would you go to? You go to the person who has more and more money. So we're talking about the afterlife, right? And we talk about there's no other religion whose leader is able to resurrect. And we find that's why the resurrection is being attacked all the time, because that's where we find the truth of Christianity, because only Christ and with witnesses of Paul even making that statement is able to make that statement right. Because I think they said, you guys saw him. But Paul wasn't there, but he said there's people who are still alive who could go and even ask them.
So you're making the argument that Christianity is more than blind faith, but reason
So I want to be in the middle. Christianity, we can say it's not selfish because one, when you look at the definition of selfishness, it's more seeking your own interest. And Christianity is not seeking, Christians are not seeking their own interest. That is how it should be, because that is how Christ has commanded us to be. He said, go ye therefore into the world, right, and preach to everybody, telling them about the love of Christ and bringing them to the Christian fold. So it is not selfish in that regard, because the Bible also tells us, I think from the commandment, God said, I am a jealous God. Nobody should have any other God beside me. So, and if that is our standard, or that is our foundational definition of our Christian life, then Christianity is not selfish. On the other hand, it becomes selfish because we are neglecting our duties as Christians to tell people about the true meaning of Christianity. What we want to do is to force people, like you said, to really accept our views without them understanding what Christianity is about. And that boils down to us as Christians having the foundational knowledge. Because if, for example, I grew up in the African culture, I use myself as an example. I came from a Muslim home. You cannot just come and tell me Islam is wrong. That is what I know. I was born in that family. I grew up. I saw my mom, my dad, everybody around me. So for me, I would say Islam is the best. So when you come to me as a Christian and tell me Islam is wrong, you first of all need to start explaining to me to get me points. That is where I think it's an onus on everybody here as Christians. We need to start learning the foundational doctrines of our Christian faith. So in that regard, I would say the issue, that discussion can be, Christianity can be selfish if we as Christians neglect our duties of really preaching or telling people about Christ in a way that Christ wants it to be. Because there are some times that we become so judgmental in the point that we even forget that we were once sinners. And God brought us from a place where now we are also supposed to help others to meet us. It's not selfish, like I said, wherein because we have to seek the interest of others. We don't want other people to go the road that we have gone, right? We don't want them to lose their lives, because if somebody is going, for example, abusing drugs and everything, and even when we say like teens like Pensa, everybody, boyfriend dating, having abortion and all of those things, if you don't tell the person, my dear, you are just leading the person to hell. So it's good to tell them you are not selfish. It's also good to be very careful how we tell people about Christianity.
I just wanted to add, to sort of add to what both of them said. It's selfish to say that Christianity is right and then everybody else is wrong. It's selfish, and that's why we are not called to make that decision. It is not ours to make. We can't tell people you were wrong and I am right. We are not called to make that judgment. All we need to do is to share what we have. Right? So it is selfish, and that's why we don't do it. The word, we share our Christian faith, to share it, not to enforce it, but it's selfish because it's what was it again?
Selfish.
Exactly. It's selfish to say that I'm right, right? So we share what we have, but we don't have to enforce, like, or like make it a point that I'm
That's
right.
what I mean, like,
Exactly.
that's what I'm trying to say. You have your faith, you believe in it, which is absolutely great. Like, I'm a Christian, like, don't get me wrong, I'm a Christian, I totally believe in Christianity. But if someone comes up to me and tries to be like, oh yeah, it's your church, like, because, I don't know, like, where I work, we don't really talk about, there's a fine line. We don't talk about,
That's everywhere.
no, that's not me. So, like, we don't talk about things like that. But then when I took my vacation, I'm like, oh, I'm going to Bible camp. And they're like, why?
Yeah.
Like, well, because I'm Christian, I go to Bible camp. And then the argument begins. So they're like, and then my boss, like I said, he's really knowledgeable. So he's like, he's read the Bible back to forth. And he's like, he challenges me every time. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes it gets really tiring we live in a different society now where everyone is extremely sensitive about everything. So sometimes it may not be the Christian way, it may not be the right way, but at some point you just have to let it go and just let people make their own choices. You pray for them, you hope they come to you, but the more you argue about it, the more you say, you know what, this is right, Christianity is right. I mean, you look at the TV, you look at everywhere, and there's like too many different views about life. There are people who just want to be level, who just want to live a good life. I know a lot of people who are good people. They're not going to come out here and hurt you or anything, but they have no interest in faith.
But
Which
does that
is,
make them, does that put them right with God?
no, I get that. No, our argument is this selfish
No, is it selfish or not selfish?
To tell your faith.
to decide that Christianity is better
Right, and all other
Let me say this, if I'm selling a credit card for the bank I used to work for, National Bank, I'll never not go and say that TD Bank's credit card is better than National Bank's credit card. Would I do that?
No.
Is that selfish?
Yeah.
Am I being selfish?
Yeah.
In promoting that National Bank's credit card is the best credit card you can ever find in this world. It got everything that you need. It gives you all the packages that you need. The platinum one, you can travel with your points without paying a penny. When you travel with the MasterCard, you don't pay insurance, health insurance, because it covers you up. When you go to Cuba and rent a car, you don't need no insurance. MasterCard covers you up. When you're coming back and your flight is delayed for 5 hours, we pay you $500. TD won't give you that. Am I being selfish?
No, because now you are giving the person reasons to believe.
That is what we sell our
right?
faith. That is how we sell our faith.
Yeah.
We tell the person, this is my faith. This is what I believe in. This is how good it is for you. I'm telling the features of the faith, not the car.
Exactly, that's
I'm
what
telling
we're
them
trying to-
about
that's
what the
we're
car
trying
can
to
do
make.
for you, what Jesus can do for you, not to tell you that
Your
Jesus is
kind
better
is
than
nonsense.
yeah, but I'm still telling them the features of Jesus.
no, we get that, but that was not the argument.
Yeah, but
No,
it's
it's
selfish.
not.
It's not selfish to tell you that my Jesus is good.
No, that was a question he asked.
Oh,
That's
okay.
how we tried to put it on.
I came in late, so.
Yeah. Oh, Gina wanted to say something.
Oh, I just
Well,
have
the
a
guy was-
question.
No, that's a, a question upon a question.
Okay,
I have a meeting at 12.
so you want to say?
I wanted to ask a question before I leave.
You asked the question.
Yeah, but the question was surrounding, like, I don't understand how you can believe in something and because you don't, I don't understand how you can believe something to be right and then
Be scared to talk about it?
no, not to be scared to talk about it, but like, and yeah, because you obviously, uh, you're obviously a Christian because you believe in whatever it says in the Bible and the experiences that you have, right? And so if you believe in that, and so if you believe in that, then it's not selfish for you to think that what the other people believe in is wrong. Only because you have, I'm sure you have to do comparison, right? We don't just decide to follow something because we just grew up in it. At some point, you have to explore for yourself why you believe in that thing. So once you know that in comparison to the other options that are available to you, you make that decision. And in believing in that, when you share it and stand your ground saying that it is correct, it doesn't make it selfish. When we look at the definition of selfish that Masa came up with, right? So my question is, how do you
their truth is red.
Well, what if you
Right?
say that
So
people-
then what we need to do is to explain to them, actually, you're colorblind.
But how about
Yeah,
this?
So it's not that you're wrong,
But
it's
listen.
that you're colorblind.
Yeah.
But listen, if they're colorblind, then you're saying they have a defect.
Exactly.
So their perception is wrong.
Exactly.
But
Their
they can't
perception
see
is
it.
wrong.
So you can't say what you see is right. You can say you're colorblind. You're not seeing properly.
So you can explain to them that you're not seeing properly.
Yeah, but what if you say, well, you're right and I'm right because you're colorblind? Are they both right?
Well, that's why you don't say that's why I'm saying it's selfish to be like, oh, I'm right and you're wrong, right? Because
Why
it's
is that
your
selfish?
truth, right?
Is it
Because
your
they're
truth?
colorblind, it's their truth.
But the thing is this,
So technically, we're both
even
right.
though it's their
Well,
truth,
that doesn't relate to
Yeah,
Christianity.
it doesn't
When it
make
comes to
sense, right?
Christianity, that doesn't make sense.
but his shirt is red. My truth, because I'm colorblind, is his shirt is green. So the truth is his shirt is red. Your truth, you're not colorblind, but you like to see red or blue. Like you just, when you see red, you're like, I call that blue.
Uh-huh. Right? And okay,
Who's red? His shirt is red.
his shirt is red, right? So
The
the person
colorblind
who
person
says,
sees it as green.
So is it the person
and
that
the one
believes the
who's
shirt is
saying
red is right?
the one who's saying it's red, right? If it's red and you're saying it's red.
But you're saying that
We're
they
Christians,
are
we
right.
believe that our Christianity is right, right? What I'm saying is, it's not that they are not right, it's not that they are right, right? We are right.
So
We
you're saying
choose
just
to be
don't
right.
say that you're wrong.
Just don't come up to me and be like, you're wrong, right? If you're gonna come and tell me, you're gonna share your faith with me, you're gonna tell me, you share your faith with me, explain to me why you think this is right, where is it going?
So you're
Right?
saying don't
Where are
just
you
make
taking me?
claims.
Exactly,
Come
don't
from a
just
place of
Understanding.
understanding and
understand
say
that
people and try to
that's the
reason.
point, exactly.
What did you want to say?
What I want to say is that it actually goes both ways. It actually depends on the person. So you can actually go like, I want to be a selfish Christian, so I'm just going to say Christianity is right and everybody's wrong. I don't need to explain anything to anybody. And there's the second way you can be a best selfish Christian, where you are actually studying the word and really considering the truth. So I think it actually depends on the person and how like he or she wants to approach things, basically.
Oh, I think that I think it's a lot more easily expressed than I guess most people believe. Because in the day, when we die, at the end of the day, something's gonna happen. Whether we believe that there's heaven and that we go to heaven, or things we are get admission into heaven. Now, when that happens, that's the end game. It doesn't matter what we said in our lifetime. Now, we could have been arguing about a lot of things, but at the end of our lives, something happens. Whether we think, oh, this happened, something happens. And regardless of what we do, I mean, because we believe in our Christianity, we believe in our faith, we believe that what's going to happen after our death is heaven. So we can argue and say that it's kind of not being selfish to kind of keep it to ourselves, to kind of say that your way is kind of right, and our way, my way is kind of right. But at the end of the day, that's not the case. Because if our way is right, then that means that their way is wrong. And it's about how we communicate to them, kind of what you're saying. It's not about going and saying that it's wrong and you shouldn't believe in that. Even if that's the case, it's the way you communicate to them and how you talk to them and kind of explain why it's wrong.
So you're saying that it's not just people guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Saying like I believe this, you believe that, and no one really knows. You're saying because of the Bible we know, and then not telling them as a consequence.
I think so, because I mean, our job as Christians is to go and spread the word. It's not to convince people, but to spread the word. Now that's what the Holy Spirit comes in, and that's where He convinces people to change. Now our job is to tell them. If we don't tell them, then we're neglecting our duties as Christians. Now, I guess where a lot of people go wrong is they try and convince people and argue and try and change their ways. But at the end of the day, we know for a fact that when the faith is really believing and believing that, like when you jump, you have an inclination that you're gonna land back on the ground, and you're surprised if you don't. Like if you start floating, I'll be surprised. I'll be shocked. It's the same way it should be with our faith. We know that we're going to heaven because we believe in Jesus. It's a fact. So when we go and we preach to people, our job is to tell them what it is, tell them the truth, and leave it at that, because we know that the Holy Spirit will go and convict them, and He'll do what he's supposed to do. Some people will believe, some people won't, and that's just the case. But as we do our job, we know that we're filling
where you just believe stuff, but you don't really know why you believe it. So being that kind of a Christian is not really a Christian. It's kind of the same position as your opponents or people you're not believing. It's the same thing you're doing. But when you actually research stuff like that, and you know why you believe what you believe to be true, then I think that makes more sense.
My thing is, you do know that other faiths also have their own like theories. Like
Yeah.
other faiths also can like they can also argue with us. You can bring a person in here, you can bring a Hindu person in here, and they can also argue the history of your faith. You get that, right?
Yeah.
Like we may not like we as Christians we believe that's not correct. Yes, we believe that there is a God. Like there's like yeah, we're Christians. We have a strong faith in God. But a person, like another person who's not without a religion, also has a different faith. And yeah, sometimes the way we grow up, we're raised like you're probably raised Christian. I mean, the other lady said she wasn't raised Christian, but she found Christianity, right? So you raise a certain faith, you get conformed with a certain faith, you choose certain faith that you personally believe in. But it takes like your upbringing to start it. You didn't just wake up and become a Christian. You're raised a Christian, you're raised a certain way. And at a certain point in your life, you decide you have to make a choice. Christianity is faith and it's also a choice. My parents raised me Christian, but like my parents are Baptist and I'm not. That's also like another slight difference. Like people choose to be like Catholics also have a different form of Christianity than us. Like you can bring a Catholic person here, they're gonna argue different things with us. Because that's how they see Christianity. So when my point of view when I say it's slightly selfish, I'm not trying to say that going out there and telling people like God is correct, like Jesus is correct and all that is selfish. I'm saying when you try to push it on someone and they have their own religion, that's when the selfishness comes in. You put the word out there, you tell them, if they don't want to take it, that's their personal choice. You do your part as a Christian and you just leave it there.
So this is my point. My point is that today people believe a lot of things and it's a sensitive atmosphere. You know, people get offended so easily and people get hurt so easily nowadays. The Apostle Paul says something interesting. You know, the Bible makes claims about us, about our makeup, and it's pretty accurate. But the Bible says that the Jews were given a law. And this is how they knew what God expected of them. But it says the non-Jews in the book of Romans didn't have a law. But they were given a conscience, which is like a law to them. And so this explains why God judged other nations that didn't have a law. And so it says they had a conscience. And so the Apostle Paul says this in Romans 7, that when he read the law, it shed light on his conscience, and it came alive. And it says then he was overwhelmed with the expectation of the law, and he couldn't keep it. Because what he was supposed to do shed light on his conscience of what is right and wrong. Now I want to demonstrate this, that today, people will hold to a lot of philosophies and beliefs in order to escape their conscience, in order to run from their conscience. I want to demonstrate, and they make it difficult for us. I mean, today, just saying I believe in Jesus, most of the time, we're not forcing anything. You know, we're not standing on the street corner with scripture on our shirts and say, you're going to hell. Most of the time, we're not doing that. Most of the time, all we're saying is, I believe Jesus is the only way. And people get mad and get upset, and they say, you're ignorant, you're arrogant, you're selfish, and we get scared to say anything. What are you? I'm spiritual. I want to demonstrate something. Can I use you? Yeah. So come with me. So you're a Christian. You believe that there's one way. And I'm a spiritual person. I believe that every way is right. So you say to me, Jesus is the way. Jesus is the way. And I say to you, you're wrong, and that's selfish, because every way is right. See, at the bottom of it, so I'm making the claim that he's wrong and he's selfish. His philosophy is that one way is right. But what we don't see is that I have the exact same philosophy. I believe that one way is right. And that way, that belief is that every way is right. And I'm trying to force that view on him and say, this is the way that's right. And you're wrong for believing one way is right. But me, myself, my belief is exclusive. My belief is that every way is right, and I'm trying to force that on him. It's one view. The view that all ways are right. And his view is one view, the view that one way is right. So nobody can say to the other person, you can sit down. You're wrong. The moment I say you're wrong, I'm saying I'm right. The moment I say you're selfish, I'm being selfish by that standard. And so there's philosophies. There's something underneath it when people are saying these things. Everybody thinks that they're right. Nobody walks around and says, I don't know. Should I hurt you? I don't know. Should I say this? Should I say that? I don't know. Does I don't know mean what I think it means? Does it mean I don't know, or does it mean I know? Should I say no, or should I say yes? What if you woke up one day and you're like, today I think that green is red, so I'm not going to obey the traffic laws.
Oh.
Nobody lives like that. Nobody lives and says, I don't know. Should I take care of my family? No. Should I steal? I don't know. Everybody believes that they're right. It's just that when we talk about the Christian view, most of the time about God, or bring up these things that shed light on our conscience, on what we already know. Because listen, the Bible says that we have a conscience. Right and wrong is put in there by God, and it says that we can do two things. We could shed light on that conscience, or we could suppress that conscience. You know, and there's this concept in the Bible of a little leaven leavens the whole lump. And if you allow a little bit, you'll allow more, and more, and more. That a little lie, a white lie, this lie, that lie. On TV, you see something horrific, disgusting. In a movie scene, someone's arm gets chopped off. And you're like, oh no, that's disgusting. But then when you see it again and again and again, it's boring. Like, I don't want to see this. This is boring. It's not the same. So it's important what we watch. It's important what we put inside of ourselves. It's important. But just because we believe that we're right doesn't mean that we're selfish. Because the point I'm making is that everybody believes they're right. When they make that claim and say you're selfish, they believe they're right. You're actually selfish. When a person says there is no absolute truth, they're making an absolute claim. That there is absolutely no truth. That's an absolute claim. It's impossible to not believe in absolute truth and still speak and believe what you're saying. It's impossible to say something is wrong without believing something's right. Has anyone ever heard, if God is real, why is there evil in the world? How would you answer that?
So yeah, it's all sin.
It's not evil, like evil in its nature is the absence of the presence of God or what things ought to be, right? So it is in itself is saying that God, we know that the world is falling. So the way that it was supposed to be is not anymore. So that's why evil is there. So when we see that in Genesis, and that's what God said. So at the end of the day, we can't do anything about it. It's a fallen one. That's why God is preparing a different place where He's going to make our own place. So evil, we cannot escape evil. It's the absence of the presence of God.
I would say that somewhat with the fact that God has given us the ability to choose. The fact that we can choose to do what's right and choose to do what's wrong. And that's why evil exists, because we have the decision to choose to what God wants us to do, and we have the decision to do what he doesn't want us to do. And the fact that that option is there, I think that's why evil exists.
I was just gonna say, like, each of us have our own views on what sin is. So what I may think sin is may be something different from what someone's view of sin is. So it's like, so if I think someone's doing something wrong and they think they're doing something right, it's always gonna be conflicted. So it's not always gonna be like, we're not always gonna like agree on certain things. We're not always gonna disagree on certain things. But at the same time, like, because our views are different, everyone's always gonna think something else. we we naturally don't think the same way. Everyone thinks differently. So like unless we all think the same way, like everything's always gonna be different.
So then we should prepare ourselves in order to engage other people in a way that takes into consideration that they don't have the same presuppositions or beliefs as us. So we have to shape our evangelism, or just the way we share our beliefs with people, with an understanding that they're gonna do, in order to avoid fights.
Yeah, I like the way you're saying is, I feel like the best way to reach out to someone is you obviously have to know first where they're coming from. Because if you only take your perception into a conversation, that's where you become ignorant and you're unable to reach that soul or touch that person, because then they're always going to be defensive because they feel like you're always attacking them. But if you come from a point of understanding, that's where you're able to realize, like, that's how you're able to gain or win someone over. And also the reason why evil still exists in the world is because of God's given us free will. So you have that free will to do as you please. He said, like, you have the free will to decide what you want to do. I'm always there. I'm knocking at the door. I'm waiting for you to open it for me. But if you're unable to, like, unable to, like, realize that, that's where you become ignorant and be like, oh, God exists. I don't believe in God because there's evil in this world. But it comes down to the fact that you have your own right to choose. So.
The point that I'm trying to make is that the Bible says that God created us and He put in us a conscience. We should see evidence of that in the world. And of course we have different opinions, but what I'm trying to say is that in the world we see that everyone lives according to the Christian worldview, even though they have different opinions. Everyone lives with right and wrong, good and evil, and these are Christian worldviews. When someone brings up evil to say that God doesn't exist because evil exists, it's kind of counterproductive because evil assumes a way that things ought to be. Evil assumes, and if there's a way that things ought to be, then there's someone that brought it to be. So that's the question of evil. There's a story that Rabbi Zacharias speaks of, and he says a man had a horse. And he raised this horse and spent a lot of time training this horse. And one day the horse ran away. And his neighbor came and said, bad luck, your horse ran away. The next day the horse came back and brought 20 other horses with him. The neighbor came and said, good luck, your horse brought other horses. You have so many horses. He says, what do I know about these things? The next day, one of the wild horses kicks his 4-year-old and breaks his leg. The neighbor comes and says, bad luck, one of the horses broke your son's leg. He says, good luck, bad luck, what do I know about these things? And the next day a mob comes to this village. This mob goes and they force young kids into the army. And after examining this child, they see that his leg was broken and that he's unfit. So they let him go and move on to the next village. So the neighbor comes and says, good luck, your son broke his leg. That the horses came. So the point that he makes is that in one event, we don't know the outcome of what's going to happen. So he says, why don't we wait? Why don't we wait till we see God, till we ask God? For maybe in that evil, he wanted to show the heinousness of wrong and show the beauty of good. The statement was made that there are some good people. But what is good? By what standard do we define good? There was a time in my life where I thought I was a really good person. And I would pity myself why no one cared for me, after a day of going out, selling drugs, robbing people to make money. I'm a great guy. Why doesn't anyone like me? At my school, why are people scared of me? But what is the definition of good? And there's a sermon by this pastor that says, how good is good enough? How good is good enough? How good do you have to be? This is most religions, they say do more good than bad. How do I know that my good is outweighing my bad?
You don't.
And how do I know what I think is good is actually good to God? How do I know when I'm tipping the scale? What is good? And how good is good enough? I'll tell you this, that in every other religion, there is no assurance of God's acceptance. I was raised in a Muslim family, as a Muslim. And I left that faith when I was 9 and became an atheist. But I was presented a God like King Xerxes, who Esther didn't or couldn't go up to without the fear of death, if he didn't ask for her. It's a God that I didn't call to reveal himself or to know intimately because he was too high and too great. And a common saying or verse that we repeated was God is merciful and gracious. He's the most merciful and gracious. But I didn't know, even if I was on my best behavior, if he was going to be merciful and gracious to me. And the sad thing was that I was living my whole life doing certain religious things so well to the best of my ability. And I would have lived my whole life doing those things, not knowing if God was going to accept it or not. I had that opportunity to ask questions and to examine and to look into other things, but I think it's a sad thing. And I think this is where we can plant seeds in each other's minds and in people's minds. It's a sad thing for someone to just believe something without any basis, without knowing why they believe it, without asking questions. And it's a wonderful thing in Canada. You know, we go and do street ministry at Young and Dundas, and people come from all around the world. It's a wonderful thing for many Muslims to come to Canada because here they can ask questions and they can hear about other things without threat. I had a man tell me, he said, if I left Islam, I wouldn't go to anything else. And part of that is the shame and the threat that would come with him even thinking about another way. At least he left Islam and he's nothing. But in Christianity, we have an assurance. Jesus gives an assurance, a promise, that whoever believes in him would have eternal life. And that who doesn't believe in him, eternal damnation. Jesus presents a right and a wrong. He says he's the way and there's no other way. And the selfish thing would be not to share that, but it'd be selfish to do it in a non-Christian way, in a non-loving way. I want to end with a short video. That's not it. On world classical music. Let's see how much of it we can play. It's a video by C.S. Lewis on sexual morality. And we know the views that the Bible holds on that.
On Sexual Morality by C.S. Lewis. After all, said Claire, they had a right to happiness. We were discussing something that once happened in our own neighborhood. Mr. A had deserted Mrs. A and got his divorce in order to marry Mrs. B, who had likewise got her divorce in order to marry Mr. A. And there was certainly no doubt that Mr. A and Mrs. B were very much in love with one another. If they continued to be in love, and if nothing went wrong with their health or their income, they might reasonably expect to be very happy. It was equally clear that they were not happy with their old partners. Mrs. B had adored her husband at the outset, but then he got smashed up in the war, and it was known that he had lost his job. Life with him was no longer what Mrs. B had bargained for. Poor Mrs. A, too, she had lost her looks and all her liveliness. It might be true, as some said, that she consumed herself by bearing his children and nursing him through the long illness that overshadowed their earlier married life. You mustn't, by the way, imagine that A was the sort of man who nonchalantly threw a wife away like the peel of an orange he'd sucked dry. A suicide was a terrible shock to him. We all knew this, for he told us so himself. But what can I do, he said. A man has a right to happiness. I had to take my one chance when it came. I went away thinking about the concept of a right to happiness. At first, this sounds to me as odd as a right to good luck. For I believe, whatever one school of moralists may say, that we depend for a very great deal of our happiness or misery on circumstances outside all human control. A right to happiness doesn't, for me, make much more sense than a right to be 6 feet tall, or to have a millionaire for your father, or to get good weather whenever you want to have a picnic. I can understand a right as a freedom guaranteed me by the laws of the society I live in. Thus, I have a right to travel along the public roads, because society gives me that freedom. That's what we mean by calling the roads public. I can also understand a right as a claim guaranteed me by the laws, and correlative to an obligation on someone else's part. If I have a right to receive £100 from you, this is another way of saying that you have a duty to pay me £100. If the laws allow Mr. A to desert his wife and seduce his neighbour's wife, then, by definition, Mr. A has a legal right to do so, and we need bring in no talk about happiness. But of course that was not what Claire meant. She meant that he had not only a legal, but a moral right to act as he did. In other words, Claire is, or would be, if she thought it out, a classical moralist after the style of Thomas Aquinas, Grotius, Hooker, and Locke. She believes that behind the laws of the state there is a natural law. I agree with her. I hold this conception to be basic to all civilization. Without it, the actual laws of the state become an absolute, as in Hegel. They cannot be criticized because there is no norm against which they should be judged. The ancestry of Claire's maxim, they have a right to happiness, is august. In words that are cherished by all civilized men, but especially by Americans, it has been laid down that one of the rights of man is a right to the pursuit of happiness. And now we get to the real point. What did the writers of that august declaration mean? It is quite certain what they did not mean. They did not mean that a man was entitled to pursue happiness by any and every means, including, say, murder, rape, robbery, treason, and fraud. No society could be built on such a basis. They meant to pursue happiness by all lawful means, that is, by all means which the law of nature eternally sanctions, and which the laws of the nation shall sanction. Admittedly, this seems at first to reduce their maxim to the tautology that men, in pursuit of happiness, have a right to do whatever they have a right to do. But tautologies, seen against their proper historical context, are not always barren tautologies. The Declaration is primarily a denial of the political principles which long governed Europe, a challenge flung down to the Austrian and Russian empires, to England before the Reform Bills, to Bourbon France. It demands that whatever means of pursuing happiness are lawful for any should be lawful for all. That man, not men of some particular caste, class, status, or religion, should be free to do so. In a century when this is being unsaid by nation after nation and party after party, let us not call it a barren tautology. But the question as to what means are lawful, what methods of pursuing happiness are either morally permissible by the law of nature, or should be declared legally permissible by the legislature of a particular nation, remains exactly where it did. And on that question I disagree with Claire. I don't think it is obvious that people have the unlimited right to happiness, which she suggests. For one thing, I believe that Claire, when she says happiness, means simply and solely sexual happiness. Partly because women like Claire never use the word happiness in any other sense. But also because I never heard Claire talk about the right to any other kind. She was rather leftist in her politics, and would have been scandalized if anyone had defended the actions of a ruthless man-eating tycoon on the ground that his happiness consisted in making money, and he was pursuing his happiness. Claire, in fact, is doing what the whole Western world seems to me to have been doing for the last 40-odd years. When I was a youngster, all the progressive people were saying, why all this prudery? Let us treat sex just as we treat all our other impulses. I was simple-minded enough to believe they meant what they said. I have since discovered that they meant exactly the opposite. They meant that sex was to be treated as no other impulse in our nature has ever been treated by civilized people. All the others, we admit, have to be bridled. Absolute obedience to your instinct for self-preservation is what we call cowardice. To your acquisitive impulse, avarice. Even sleep must be resisted if you're eccentric. But every unkindness and breach of faith seems to be condoned, provided that the object aimed at is 4 bare legs in a bed. It is like having a morality in which stealing fruit is considered wrong, unless you steal nectarines. And if you protest against this view, you are usually met with chatter about the legitimacy and beauty and sanctity of sex, and accused of harboring some Puritan prejudice against it as something disreputable or shameful. I deny the charge. Foam-born Venus, golden Aphrodite, Our Lady of Cyprus. I never breathed a word against you. If I object to boys who steal my nectarines, must I be supposed to disapprove of nectarines in general, or even of boys in general? It might, you know, be stealing that I disapproved of. The real situation is skillfully concealed by saying that the question of Mr. A's right to desert his wife is one of sexual morality. Robbing an orchard is not an offense against some special morality called fruit morality. It is an offense against honesty. Mr. A's action is an offense against good faith, to solemn promises, against gratitude toward one to whom he was deeply indebted, and against common humanity. Our sexual impulses are thus being put in a position of preposterous privilege. The sexual motive is taken to condone all sorts of behavior which, if it had any other end in view, would be condemned as merciless, treacherous, and unjust. Now, though I see no good reason for giving sex this privilege, I think I see a strong cause. It is this. It is part of the nature of a strong erotic passion, as distinct from a transient fit of appetite, that it makes more towering promises than any other emotion. No doubt all our desires make promises, but not so impressively. To be in love involves the almost irresistible conviction that one will go on being in love until one dies, and that possession of the beloved will confer not merely frequent ecstasies, but settled, fruitful, deep-rooted, lifelong happiness. Hence all seems to be at stake. If we miss this chance, we shall have lived in vain. At the very thought of such a doom, we sink into fathomless depths of self-pity. Unfortunately, these promises are found often to be quite untrue. Every experienced adult knows this to be so as regards all erotic passions, except the one he himself is feeling at the moment. We discount the world without end pretensions of our friends and moors easily enough. We know that such things sometimes last and sometimes don't. And when they do last, this is not because they promised at the outset to do so. When two people achieve lasting happiness, this is not solely because they are great lovers, but because they are also, I must put it crudely, good people, controlled, loyal, fair-minded, mutually adaptable people. If we establish a right to sexual happiness, which supersedes all the ordinary rules of behavior, we do so not because of what our passion shows itself to be in experience, but because of what it professes to be while we are in the grip of it. Hence, while the bad behavior is real and works miseries and degradations, the happiness which was the object of the behavior turns out again and again to be a usury. Everyone, except Mr. A and Mrs. B, knows that Mr. A, in a year or so, may have the same reason for deserting his new wife as for deserting his old. He will feel again that all is at stake. He will see himself again as the great lover, and his pity for himself will exclude all pity for the woman.
So that kind of contained a lot that we talked about. But imagine a world where everyone did what they saw fit in their own eyes. Imagine a world where everyone did as they felt like it. You know, our actions have consequences. And just like shoving my finger in my eye is going to hurt me, being unfaithful or lying or stealing from someone hurts them. But something that came up in this conversation was our faith on Christian morality and right and wrong, and how we communicate it to others. Jesus said this. He said, out of the heart flows the issues of life. And he says, where your heart is, your treasure, where your treasure is, your heart is. And so it's important that what we take to people is not behavioral adjustment, behavioral modification, but what Jesus really taught, a heart change. To experience God's love and forgiveness and to be changed by it. Rather than telling people you ought not do that or ought not do that, telling them about the one that can change their heart and shed light on their conscience. But before we could do that, we first have to experience it ourselves. We first have to genuinely stop doing things for the sake of doing things and accept God's love and let it change us. So that we don't present to people behavioral modification, but rather personal relationship with a God that's able